With Roz, it's very limited in terms of what she can emote, but still she had to emote a lot. Subtle things that we do, like for example, the eyes had certain bellow controls, and using which, we would try to mime the lens would focus. And at that point in time, I really didn't know where all of this would take me in. I just knew that I enjoyed doing what I was doing it. We used a lot of our head references for Fink. Like I cannot act like a dog or a fox, but I can use the information that I can get out of my head acting and I can implement that on Fink. The one thing is that we are more of a service-oriented sort of a destination, I would say.
Right.
We're doing a lot of VFX work and we also do a lot of feature animation. We've not seen as much of IP work coming from India where, we have our own ideas and making our own animated movies.
So, hi Prashanth, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm good, I'm good. So hearing some great reviews about the Wild Robot. I watched the film. I really enjoyed watching it.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to hear that it's doing pretty well in India as well. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of good word of mouth is spreading, and thankfully people are able to watch it and enjoy it.
So how's the reception been for you? What have you been hearing the last few weeks? Because it's been a great journey for at least you, because working on the animation, working on the characterizations of a lot of these animals. How has it been for you, the journey?
So yeah, a memorable experience working on the movie actually because I got to work with one of the legends in animated movie making, Chris Sanders, and he's directed many of the beloved movies in the past, like Lilo and Stitch, How to Train Your Dragon, and it was always a dream for me to work with someone like him. And in many ways, it was fulfilled while working on Wild Robot. I would say the experience of working with Chris was enriching in a way because he thinks of the emotions of characters in a very unique way, and he has a lot of he gives a lot of space for things to breathe. Unlike modern day movie making, where everything happens really quick. So that's one very unique characteristic of his movie making. And I also enjoy the fact because he's an amazing artist himself, and he really appreciates animators and the ideas that they bring to the table. So it was
Right.
almost always like we would be pitching ideas on our own, like a collaborator. Like we would be suggesting things to be done in the shot, and he would be very receptive of all the ideas. And also like the movie in general required us to animate in a style that is different from some of the other movies that we've done in the past at DreamWorks because it's like
No.
more naturalistic, grounded performances of animals. All of that required us to think in a very different way and to apply ourselves in a different way. And so I got to learn a lot on the project because quadrupedal animation or be it making a bird fly, there are different mechanics that we need to keep in mind to make it work the right way. So it
Right.
was a good learning experience for me as well. And I'm happy that
Amazing.
people
Yeah.
people like
Amazing.
it.
Oh, that's great to hear. Okay. Okay. So one of the most fascinating aspects for me, was like the humanization of Roz itself. Because feelings like motherhood and like empathy cannot be mimicked, like as she says in the beginning, right? So she imitates other animals and starts a survival in the island. But then feelings like motherhood and empathy cannot come on itself. So how did you bring about these emotions through animation?
That's actually a very interesting question because with Roz, it's very limited in terms of what she can emote, but still she had to emote a lot. And it all depends on, um, it all depends on a lot of subtle things that we do. Like, for example, the eyes had certain bellow controls, and using which, we would try to mime the how the lens would focus and, turn around and that would kind of give you an impression of she's thinking or maybe she's focusing on something. And we also had certain, I mean, we would always try to enunciate some of her dialogue and the delivery through her head. And at times just letting her think and just staying in the right moment and then letting the right camera angle do the talking. I think that in itself communicates a lot at times. And of course, like she had a lot of other gadgets through which she could do things. But
Yeah.
some of the more subtle things, and she also had these controls where we could turn on the lights on her and it could change into different colors and it would be used to emote different things in the movie. So all of that was very helpful. And yeah,
Nice, because it brings a completely new perspective for me. Well, now brings a completely new understanding of the film itself. So
yeah.
I also read that the film required like hand painted animation along with modern CGI. So how did you find the right balance between this 2D and CG itself?
It's so basically it's in the way it is textured and rendered, I would say. It's not hand painted in terms of what we do. Basically, we are so, for example, I am responsible for all the movements and the expressions and the emotions and the characters. But then the painterly effect comes about with the way it's textured and the lighting is conceived in the project, and it all boils down to the original artwork that inspired all of these styles. So I would say it's more to do with the visual development and the way the final look of the lighting plays in the movie that gives you the painterly look. But in terms of animation, it's the process we adopt is more or less the same across different movies where we make characters move, and it's just that the look of it feels a lot more different compared to some of our previous movies.
Right, right. Because this in case like this in turn had enhanced itself the whole look of the film, I feel. Because the whole hand painted and this, as well as the CG, like together the blend of it had given a lot more refreshing feeling to the film itself, I
Yeah,
feel.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So so I was watching some of your animation short progressions, and I was curious on how what happens behind the scenes, like before the animation begins and after the animation is done. So could you just run me through the process of it? Because
Sure.
you've
So
had
basically,
gram.
the way it happens in feature animation is that you are cast on a shot or a set of shots, and then you're launched by the director. And basically, you have a meeting where he briefs you about what is required of those shots. So in our case, like for example, there could be a section of shots. He says that this character comes from screen right. He's feeling very emotional, very tense, or whatever. And then there's this character, and it needs to do this. They need to interact this way, and then they need to exit towards this side. So all of these main story beats are given to us, and he tells us about the emotional beats, and he needs to tell us about what the character is thinking. And we also sort of derive that from some of the previous shots and the sequences that are happening in the sequence in the movie. So we kind of know some of that information already. And then once we get that information, we start to block out our ideas where you just imagine these characters as like digital puppets and they have controls all over the body. So use those controls to pose them in meaningful and appealing ways. And you can sort of record these poses on a timeline and then in a sequential order, which when you play, it gives you a rough indication of what the character is going to do in the shot. And then basically those main key poses are what we show for blocking, where you're telling a story like he's first going to do this, and then he's going to turn back, and maybe he's going to look into the other direction. So you have one pose for each, and you time them in a particular way that it makes more sense and it's not very uniform. It's like it has a sort of rhythm to it. And then once you show that, you show it to the director and you tell him that this is what I'm thinking, and he can have a look at the shot. Says, you can not have him stay in that pose for too long. Maybe just have him shoot away faster, and maybe try more with his hand stretched out. Ideas like those. So we do those
Oh,
tweaks, and then we progress in animation. So instead of showing him poses, we then start to flesh things out. Like we use something called a curve editor, and we start to
right.
offset the joints, and we start to make it feel like it's really moving in a way that there's a lead and a follow, and
Mhm.
there's enough spacing, and there's enough easing in and easing out of actions. So that gives you more of a believable feeling of the performance. So
Mm.
then we show him as an anim pass, like we show the director saying that, hey, this is where I am right now. Can you take a look? Let me know what you think. He'll
Right.
look at it and he's like, most likely he's going to approve it. Yeah, this looks good. I think the changes you made was good. The hands going up is all fine now. So yeah, you can take it further and just final the shot. So that's when we get a go ahead. And then the rest of the process is us just polishing the shot, really going frame by frame at times, really looking at the finger and the poses and the eye, what
Mm.
it's doing, leading with the brow and things like that. So fleshing all of those things out and then finally calling it polished animation and then, sending it on to the next department in line. So that essentially summarizes the process.
Right, right. That's nice. Okay. So you also have to keep in mind the camera angles before doing your animation, right? So how does that work when you're doing it? Because you'll have to, and
So
there's a layer of filter that you'll have to apply in your mind before working on such animations.
yeah, so at times we do have to so basically what happens is that our input comes from something called the layout department, and where they are responsible for setting up the whole shot in terms of the cameras and the props and the characters and everything that needs to be in the shot for me to animate. So the most important thing being the camera angle. So there are times that we just use the same camera angle, and there are times that they sort of put a camera as a placeholder and they know that I'm going to change. So there are places, for example, I'm doing an action sequence, and the camera is very specific to where the action is happening and where I want the camera to be. So they will probably just put a placeholder camera in such scenarios, and I can go ahead, start to flesh out my poses, and then I think, I can move the camera this way. So I have a sort of a say on the camera in such scenarios. And then when I show it to the director and I can tell him that, I tweaked the camera to fix this, to feature this pose and to feature this action better. So that way it makes more sense. Like, it's a bit of both. Like there are shots where I don't touch the camera at all and I just animate the way it is. And there are shots where I really noodle around a little bit more.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So hearing about all this, it makes me curious about wanting to know about your background. Must have been a worldwide journey, right? To start from engineering to animation. Could you just talk to me about how it all landed here and how do you see it?
Actually, yeah, I don't know how I landed into this profession, but I would say that, yeah, I'm an engineering graduate, and I come from a family of engineers and doctors, and it was quite obvious that I was in that path. But then I think, I don't know, I was drawn more towards the creative side. Had done a course in the past, had sort of left it midway, and then I pursued it. And thanks to my father, actually, he made me join that course. I left it midway, and then I sort of went back to that. I thought, why not try this out? And that sort of got me into it. At that point in time, I really didn't know where all of this would take me in. I just knew that I enjoyed doing what I was doing it. And so that's sort of what prompted me to just keep going in this line because, that was very important for me. Like I completely lost a sense of space and time. And I was in a couple of, I was in a small company in South Bangalore, and then we had a startup of our own called Raindrops Animation Studio. So we used to do design visualization for architects and things like that. And I felt at that point in time, to me, like I was dabbling around with different things. I wanted to specialize in some aspect in CG, and I felt that character animation was the thing that I need to pursue. So 2008 is when 2007 and 2008 I did a course called Animation Mentor, and then 2009 is when I joined DreamWorks in India,
Right.
and was there for about 8 years or so, and then I moved to London for a short while, for a little under 2 years. And then I got a call back from DreamWorks here in LA, and I said, okay, fine, I'll come over. So I've been here since 2018.
Coming back home.
Yeah, sort of.
Okay. Coming back to the wild robot, let's say you're taking a character like Fink. I was watching some of your videos of how you animated Fink. How do you develop such a character? Do you actively seek out references and try making your animation different from the rest of that's already available? How does that work?
That's an interesting question. We don't develop the characters. I mean, the design of the character and the way they look is not what we decide because it would have long been decided before we even get into production by the biz dev department. But something that we can do is to strive to achieve the appeal in the design in the earlier designs, and we strive to pose the character in the most appealing way, like inspired by those earlier explorations of Fink drawings and all that. So we definitely try to get it to seem more grounded and naturalistic in the way these characters move, especially Fink and the other animals, I would say. And it's not something. It's not as much about how different your shot is going to look. It's more about how it it should seem cohesive in terms of the entire sequence or the whole character and the way the he plays across in the whole movie. And in doing that, we refer to a lot of reference of foxes, and we also have a robust inbuilt system where we have different gaits of the fox built in, like trots, or be it a run or a slow walk. And there are ways that we can transition from one gate to another. That's another option that is available for the animator. So that way, it's like it looks like it's the same character. And also there are libraries that we use in terms of poses, or be it expressions, or be
Okay.
it the way his ears are posed out. And in general, we look out for certain iconic shapes of Fink, like his ears and his tail, and we make sure that all of these are clear in the way we pose. So that's one thing that we keep in mind when we pose and we animate him across the shots.
Right, right. For Ross itself, would there have been different sort of animations that would have been explored? Because Ross is not really a Hugsy animal, like a Hugsy robo, for example. It's like a typical robo, and you see a clear difference between Ross that you see on screen, and then the Rosms that are sent to pick him up back to the back to another planet. And then so there are these different variations that you would sort of experiment with, right? So how did you land on this particular Rosm robo?
You mean to say the way she moves?
So the way her character, her animation itself is made, because you must have had different
Yeah, so
variations
I think, yeah,
coming.
there were a lot of iterations earlier on in the movie where, the visual development artists, along with the production designer, they came in with a lot of different variations of her design.
Right.
Um, and there were like different proportions that they're explored in the past. And I think they zeroed in on this one, which felt sort of simple with, having a spherical head and then these two eyes. And we felt that a lot could be emoted just with this. And in terms of the way she moves, um uh, she basically needs to have that ability to, move in different unpredictable ways, because
Yeah.
she needs to adapt to different situations and different in different ways that animals move. Like she mimes different animals in the movie, if you've seen. So her rig needed to be robust enough to let us try out all those things. So her body as well, her trunk and the torso is also more of a sphere, and it can rotate by itself. So it gives you a
Yeah.
lot of different. It lets you animate it in a way that you don't expect. And her arms as well are more like rubbery things. They don't have like hard limbs or like bones. So that sort of lets you extend it and retract it. Same with her legs as well. So it gave us a lot of interesting options. Where there's one where the body just rotates around the leg and it goes from underneath and then it comes up. So these are all unpredictable sort of ideas that animators explored during the movie. And I think the design in itself had to be simple yet uh, robust enough to let us do all of this.
Okay, right, right. So I was also watching a few videos on how you animators were, sort of sitting in a room and brainstorming how the behavior would be and trying to like sort of mimic their behavior. Like there were a few people who were trying to mimic the goose behavior, bright bird's behavior, and then how the woodpecker would react when Ross was sticking stickers all around the forest. And does that usually happen in a place like DreamWorks? Does that usually happen in animation companies where you try mimicking their behavior and then before animation?
Yeah, it's called a reference pass. Like, most animators, we usually shoot a reference. Because one thing that I missed out, I think, when I mentioned the process of, how it happens, when we get a launch from the director, even before we block the shot out, we usually do, we usually take a reference of ourselves enacting the actions, because you sort of
Okay.
need to get a visual idea as to where you would be trying out certain ideas, and how the character is going to be facing the camera. And so in trying to explore all that, we usually have a reference pass where we enact out the whole performance. And you cannot enact it out like a goose, but then you can just do your version of it. And it
Yeah.
could be just the head turns, like we used a lot of our head references for Fink, Like I cannot act like a dog or a fox, but I can use the information that I can get out of my head acting, and I can implement
Mm.
that on Fink. So things like that. So we usually get more clarity on what our idea needs to be, and so in a way that it can work with the blocking ideas that we have in the shot.
Right, right. That's nice. Okay. I was just having a little more, wanting a little more, know a little bit more because, like, could you also tell me, like, how you work as a team in as like animators? Because you also have to make sure that all of you are on the same page, right? When you're drawing an animation or drawing a character or trying to, because you might also have a few creative differences while creating a character. So how do you make sure that all of you are all on the same page and like because not everyone imagines it the way that we imagine it to be, right? So how do you all work as a team?
Yeah, so in terms of that, there's a lot of we always have a group discussion before we start working on a sequence. Um, and at least have a conversation. I mean, some of the surrounding shots that are shared by different animators, we usually have a conversation as to, hey, what's your approach going to be, and how am I going to continue the action into my shot, and then how is this person going to take it from there. So we make sure that there is that sort of a communication before we get deeper into our ideas. In terms of the emotional arc across these shots, we usually refer to the launch notes of the other animators as well. So or
Oh,
we at least gather it from the other animators. Like uh, he would say that hey, he is going to be super energetic in my shot, and I think you need to carry over a little bit of that into your shot, though he's not talking in your shot. So I'm aware of it, or I can get that brief even from the director at times. Like, he would say, hey, you know what, these shots, he's going to be super energetic, and you need to carry over that into your shots. So we always keep checking back and forth with our the other animators who are in the handling the surrounding shots, and also there is also always the head of animation who can keep checking with, or your supervising animators. They're always there to help you out. In terms of expressions and the way the character emotes, we always have this library where you have a set you have a lot of expressions available, and also lip sync shapes where where your character is
uh,
talking. You have shapes for each of the vowels and consonants, and so that way you're sort of hitting more or less the same shape, but then you kind of get to tweak it for the camera that you're animating to. So you have that information to start off with, and that way you make sure that the character is similar across these shots in terms of the way it looks and in terms of the energy. um, so yeah, I mean, it's always there's a lot of back and forth uh, to eventually get it right, but then that's at least a start.
right. Okay. So one of my favorite scenes from the film is when Bright Bill rests on Roz's neck, and when she goes all, and when Roz goes all the way to the cliff to send her off, and holding on to that one tree and just looking and gazing at how she's just migrated, like just flown out of the nest. And these are the scenes where you know that Roz's progression has gone above and beyond its programming, and all of these should be gradually shown without the need to thrust upon these cheesy mother and son sequences. So could you tell me how do you incorporate these minor differences into the filmmaking process so that to make sure it looks seamless and natural?
So basically, all of this is in the boards. In fact, in so I don't think so we can while animating, we do have certain guidelines, but the ones at least that you mentioned are already decided in the by the story department, and
Mm.
we already have that brief when we are animating. When it comes to the behavior of Roz, of course, there needs to be this progression of her, being this this robot that's lost in the wild, and you sort of see that connection that she sort of gradually develops uh, with Brightbill. And when it reaches the stage where she has to send him off for the migration, um, I think it really the animators really focused on there are certain close-ups of Roz where you can really see her thinking and processing. And you can see um, there's a particular her body language sort of changes around that part, and you can see her run towards the cliff, and you can see the desperation in her. And I think it's all the way in which it's animated. You wouldn't see that before, like, in some of the earlier sequences, but then, it's more of a progression. And it's, again, it goes to the way the animator has been launched on those shots, and the requirements in terms of, the story, and what is required in that shot. So, yeah, I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, yeah, I got it. Yeah, I
Okay.
got that. Thank you. Thank you for that. So be it the panic attack scene in Puss in Boots, or there are tons of emotional scenes in the wild robot itself, and how robots tend to mimic human emotions and all that. And like we also see some very close to reality sequences like global warming and climate change in the wild robot itself. So animation is getting so close to reality. Like there's so much of realness in animation. So how do you see this evolution? Is what my question.
Yeah, actually, that's a good question, actually. So I would say realism perhaps is not the best way to describe it. It's more of caricatured realism, I would say, because um, so of course, like, back in the days, technology had not really advanced as much. But then these days, we have such I mean, the computing has advanced so much, and our rigs have become so much more robust, and there's so many more controls that you can go into the nitty-gritties and, add a lot of these minute and minor uh, beats into the performance of a character. Like on the panic attack, beat the small twitches in the hand, or, like something on his face, or, the twitch on his brows and things like that. They add a lot to, the experience of it being real, I would say. So I think um, also the animators and the artists going really in depth into understanding and researching and really um, analyzing the clips and references and seeing what is working and what's not working, and choosing and picking the right ideas. And I think these kind of things really let us, push it further in terms of, it looking more realistic. Um,
Right.
and I think there are also the places where you need to, dial it down a little bit, because, simpler is better sometimes. And when you tend to overdo it, it sort of tends to confuse the audience in a way. So there are always
Mm.
times and opportunities where we try to see if we can simplify the way we are communicating an idea without doing too much, like, too many head gestures and things like that, which you would actually do in reality. Maybe, like, if I'm panicking and I'm doing things like that, but in animation, we tend to simplify that so that, it is easier to communicate certain ideas.
Right.
And it's more closer to, like, being a storybook sort of a feeling to the visuals.
Right. Right. So what has been the most enjoyable sequence working in the wild robot? What was the most enjoyable scene for you?
Actually, many of them. Yeah, there's the one. There's a scene um, where Ross gets the beacon, and then from Rummage in the robot graveyard, and she's been asked to go back and connect to her makers. And then she's sitting on top of a hill, and she's like, she's all dejected. And then Fink runs up, and then he, like, and Ross says that, we messed up everything. And then
Yeah.
Fink then sees the beacon in her hand, and then she puts it on top, and he smells it, and then he finds out that, oh, you're leaving us. So yeah, that moment was one of my favorites, because I got to animate that whole entire section. Um, and then there's a bit where the geese are inside the dome, and then they get attacked by the robots, and there are these Rico robots, these hefty guys. They start
Yeah.
firing the their cannons. So yeah, I got to animate some of that sections as well. So that was also another favorite. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So is it like a how many member team is yours who work on the whole film?
On the movie, I think we were around 37 or 38 of us, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. Right. Okay. And you were the lead animator, right?
Yeah, I was one of the lead animators. We were three
Okay.
of us. Yeah.
Right, right. So, what is the most challenging bit? What did you find most challenging, and how did you get out of it, or how did you solve that
I
out?
think the challenging bit to me was to deal with these Rico robots that I was developing along with some other riggers. Basically, these robots, like I told you, like they're hefty and they have these cannons and they're like, um, I find that I felt that their range of movement was limited, and in the way that they can be used by animators because they're mechanical components, and it's very easy for things to start to collide with each other. And you lift the arm, and
Right.
there's a cap that sort of goes inside. So we had to be very careful in the way we use these rigs, and in ways that we can hide these sort of
Hmm.
crashing and things like that used to happen, and choose our even the pose ideas that we used to have used to be very very dependent on these kind of hiding things and making things work the right way. So yeah, that I felt was very challenging. And also he had to run, and there were a lot of different gates that we were trying. And in the end, there's a big battle sequence where they're like fighting with the animals. So the rig needed to be it needed to be in a position where it can be animated in ways that you're not expecting it to move. So yeah, that was very challenging for me.
Okay. One of my favorite portions was the beaver giving like a prosthetic leg to
Yeah,
Ross. It was like almost like, hey, we are accepting you as our own. It was almost saying that. So it was one of my favorite scenes. But
yeah.
back to how it all pans out, how your job is, it requires a lot of creative juice, right? Just to work on just a few scenes or just the whole movie itself. So what do you do when you have creative blocks? Like, what do you do when your juice runs out?
That's a good question. In fact, yeah, that's so basically you are in an environment where there's so many great talents around you, and it's always recommended. I mean, I to me, what I do is like I look at others' works and I see how they have progressed from stage A to stage B, and I go through some of their earlier versions and see that okay, fine, that's how they went from here to there, and then so just to get me going and see that if this person can really reach the stage, that's something I should be striving for as well. That's one thing. Or another thing that I might do is like parallel creative activity. Like, I sometimes might try to draw something. I'm not a trained artist, but there are certain things that I might just see on the internet, and I would like to just try to draw that in my own way. So that sort of gets me going. So you're still in that zone, but then you're doing something totally different. And many times I've observed that you have your shot open, and you've hit a block and you're not quite sure what you're doing is right or wrong. But then you suddenly switch to a parallel activity, a creative activity. Sketch for some time, 15 minutes of that, and then look back at your shot, just hit play, and you can right away see, where you're going wrong, and you can see
Mm.
what can be improved. And it's or even at times I just even happen to see an interview or something on YouTube. It really refreshes my mind, or see something that's totally different from what you're doing. So it gives you a
Right.
fresh perspective to what you're working on, and it clears up a lot of blocks in my mind. So or music for that matter, like listen to music. So yeah, all of these will definitely help.
Right, right. Okay. So you also constantly look out for references, look out for new things to try out in the industry as well.
Yes, absolutely. Like anything that's out there, any parallel creative activity, I would say yes, it definitely helps. And even at times, like just disconnecting and not doing anything at all, like at times I've seen that it really helps. Though you may
Mm.
not really feel good about it, like you're not in a good spot with your shot, but then you still have to disconnect from it. But over time, you start to make peace with these kind of ideas. And to me, my daughter is there, and I just sometimes just disconnect, just go play with her for a bit, and just that itself gives me so much of you know um, clarity of thought. Sometimes, like when I come back, I'm so refreshed. So lots to look for, actually. Yeah.
So when we were talking about new things, the rise of AI is very inevitable, and we see that in our everyday usage as well. So with the rise of AI, how do you see the role of animators and animation changing?
I don't know. Like I'm not in a good position to really talk about AI because I really don't. respect it as much. Um, though it's like an emerging technology, but I just find that it is not the ethics behind it is not correct, and also the
Right.
fact that it completely like if you look at the future generations of people who are aspiring to be in this field, they don't
Yeah.
have as much of a learning curve at all. Like, what are they going to eventually do? Like everything is probably being spoon fed in a way. Like you don't have to do much to achieve certain results. Is sort of an idea that I get with AI, like using prompts and getting to a result. And from wherever I'm seeing it right now, I don't see it going so far because movie making is a very iterative process, and we go
Right.
through a lot of different iterations to get to the final result that we achieve. And
Right.
I don't. I mean, at least from what I've seen so far, I don't see AI being able to handle an iterative process, and also being consistent in the way the characters are. Like for example, it could be just a character sitting on another one, like say Mowgli sitting on Baloo, or I'm just giving you a vague example. And then let's say I want the exact same animation, but then with Mowgli flailing his arms, or maybe a different a garment on him, or something like that, with the exact same animation. I don't think it'll be able to give you that. And also the fact that it needs to look the same across different shots, the environment, and there needs to be a continuity between the shots. And leave alone that, like, even the way the characters move, there's not much of a texture that AI can give you. And I think there's always that quirkiness that we humans can add
Right.
with our choices and with our ideas and some unexpected ideas that we add that makes animation alive. I think with AI, I think it's not possible. And also, AI is just using what's already been done. It's not being inventive. And I think that's where I think uh, hand, keyframe animation is always going to have its own importance. And AI, I would say that it would really have its place in certain of the things that we do, like, the more monotonous jobs in animation, like, being the housekeeping work that, you may call it in animation. Certain repetitive tasks in animation could benefit from AI. But the creative part of it, like, the way we pose a character and all that, I think that needs to still remain in the hands of animators and, the artists who work on the movie. And I think that's the way forward. I mean, we would want to focus on the more creative aspects and leave the more monotonous and time-consuming things to AI, if at all there's an option that way. That's the way I would see it.
Yeah. So you see the demand for our animators and the creative hands would still be there for even like say 10 years down the line, because we see that constantly it replaces jobs. So yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it's
that's a
there everywhere, like, in all the different fields, like be it screenwriters, or be it in the way things are edited, or I think there needs to be a balance. It probably has its own market where it can be used, like, a creator who just wants a quick clip to be put on to his, presentation or something. He could benefit from AI. I mean, it's not ideal, but then if there's something that's quickly available, they may use it. But then for more nuanced stuff, like, like a feature film, or, be it a short film, or a game or something like that, I think it will always benefit from human intelligence.
right,
Yeah.
right. So how do you see the scope of animation in India and the future?
Actually, animation has been, like, flourishing in its own way over the last 15 to 16 years, or maybe like 20, 25 years, maybe, in India. The one thing is that we are more of a service-oriented sort of a destination, I would say.
Right.
We're doing a lot of VFX work, and we also do a lot of feature animation. Um, but it's we've not seen as much of IP work coming from India, where we have our own ideas and making our own animated movies. There have been certain efforts in the past, but it perhaps has not found the right support
True,
and
true.
the right makers, and the funding that it requires. And there are times where things have gone the other way around, like, not it's not done in the right way, and it's sort of given a wrong impression to the investors, whoever it is. So yeah, I think it needs to be. I think the right people need to be involved in it, and they need to get the right support from from people, from the producers, and people who are funding it. And I think definitely, I think intellectual property coming from India, I think will have a lot of value because we have so many stories to tell, not just mythology, but so many other stories to tell from an Indian standpoint. So, but for that, I would say India is a hot destination for VFX work and a lot of work, a lot of Hollywood movies that are headquartered around in London and in Canada. I think they are outsourcing work to India
Yeah.
right now, be it feature animation or be it VFX movies. So yeah, and all of that, it's creating a lot of job opportunities as well.
True. Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of VFX that's growing like far and beyond for VFX, but for animation, it's still like this just still in the growing stage. It's not yet out there. So that's my
Yes, I think it again depends on the market and what people. So people also fine tune their skills based on what's available. So when a lot of VFX shops opened in India, I think a lot of people focused on getting more specialized into VFX animation, be it compositing or whatever it is. So yeah, and then not as much of focus was on feature animation, and I think with the rise of companies like Double Negative, Micros Animation, there's 88 Pictures, and a couple of other players, I think. And then, so yeah, they're doing a lot of feature films and also perhaps TV, television, episodic series. So this
right.
is sort of opening a lot of new opportunities, and I think animators are focusing in that direction. So hopefully, I don't know, like, someone will make an an exciting IP coming out of India.
Yeah, soon. I hope so. I hope so too.
Yeah.
What's next for you? You've had great releases this year, Kung Fu Panda 4, and you've had The Wild Robot. What's next in line for you?
So we're working on Bad Guys 2, which is the sequel to
Okay.
the original Bad Guys that came out in 2021, I think.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's shaping along pretty well. I think it releases next year, sometime around June-ish, if I'm not mistaken. Uh,
Right.
um, and then yeah, there are a couple of other movies, actually three of them that are in the pipeline, which I cannot disclose much. I mean, one of them is Shrek 5, of course, which it's already announced. Shrek 5
Yeah.
is in the works.
Chris Sanders had announced The Wild Robot 2 also, right? So
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's greenlit officially by NBC Universal, so I cannot really comment on that. So, but yeah, I mean, everybody is like really eager to see, to wait to take part in a sequel of Wild Robot.
yeah, okay. Thank you so much for your time. I really had a great discussions, learned a lot from you, and about animation, the work that goes behind it, and everything. And I really had a great time.
Thank you so much. My pleasure too.
Yeah. So all the best for your future endeavors. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you so much.